is actually up, IGN? Michael Swaim here, enjoying the platinum trophy that is the chance to talk to the folks behind Deathloop, Arkhane Studios' new assassination saga with a time loop twist. Now, Arkhane has brought us such epic games as Prey and the Dishonored series, and now they aim to tell the story of Colt and Juliana, a killer and a visionary locked in a brutal struggle for survival. But first things first, they've sent us an amazing clip package with some gameplay, some explanation of what the game's all about, so let's go right to that, and then we'll be back to unpack it a bit in a second.
Hello, I'm Dinga Bakaba, game director at Arkhane Lyon, and I'm here to tell you all about Deathloop. I only have a few seconds to sum it up, so Deathloop is a murder puzzle where you play an assassin trapped in a time loop. But you know what? I think I can explain it better than that. In Deathloop, you wake up on the shores of Black Reef, trapped in an endless time loop that makes the island and its inhabitants repeat the same day over and over. And to escape, you'll have to kill 8 targets before the day resets. These targets, however, they aren't big fans of this plan, so they've ordered everyone on the island to shoot you on sight. So this may be a game about time, but you're not on a timer. You can figure things out at your own pace, in any order you want, as you piece together the perfect loop to freedom. So you're starting over with each loop, but you're not starting with nothing. You'll have a chance to keep your weapons and abilities between loops. You also unlock new supernatural abilities and gain intel on your target. Now let's talk about these 8 targets. They call themselves the Visionaries, and they're a group of scientists, artists, and party animals. But they're also cold-blooded murderers looking to live forever no matter the cost. So, with 8 Visionaries spread across 4 districts of Black Reef, broken up into 4 time periods, there is a lot to accomplish in a single day. The more you learn about your targets, easier it will be to get them exactly where you want. Two down, 6 to go. You're not the only one doing the hunting. Meet Juliana. She's unpredictable, she's clever, she's the most powerful visionary. And she'll kill you more than once. And there's much more to cover, like all the supernatural abilities to unlock. Oh, and there's also artifacts that modify your weapons in crazy ways. And the truth about Black Reef is that and the time loop causes amnesia. And there are tons of parties to crash. In short, Deathloop is a murder puzzle where you play an assassin trapped in a time loop. But don't worry, time is always on your side.
Alright, we are back, and I am thrilled to be joined by Deathloop's game director, Dinga Bakaba, and art director, Seb Mitton. Thanks so much for being here, fellas. Welcome to FanFest.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
Merci, bonjour à tous.
Thank you. Well,
Hello, all.
howdy, howdy. First things first, let's dive in. I mean, it must be said, it's in the title. This game is a loop, right? We talked a bit in the video about the time loop mechanic, but just let us know, why'd you guys settle on the time loop mechanic? What's so exciting to you about the mechanic? What do you think will be enriching about the player experience, about the fact of the whole game being on a loop?
Sure. I think when we started on this project, the first thing we wanted was to build a game where you develop a strong affinity with the place, with the gameplay tools, and you kind of become an expert at the levels, the environments, and the powers, etc. So when that happens, you get a level of familiarity and ease and mastery, I would say, of the environment, the space, the options. That is very pleasant. And we figured out how can we make a game where we get every player to experience those environments, like the speedrunners, skillers, like stealth gamer. Or I think that was the first one of the project goals, and we wanted something that is narrative, so not something like a New Game Plus or just incentives to do the same thing without so we started building all our fiction around the idea of this iterative world, this time loop, and then from there a lot of various concepts emerge. You start to have a lot of questions about how this game, not how this game, but how this world that is a recurring world like this, how does it work? And then we got excited because it's when you're playing with time like that, it's like completely an entirely new way of thinking about your dialogue, your characters, the things that populate your world. And it was very, I would say, intellectually stimulating. And then, of course, there is a lot of great fiction around time loops. So it's exciting to take a stab at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk a lot about the environment and the world, because obviously if you're going to spend so much time in this environment, there's got to be a lot to explore, a lot to discover. Seb, how did you go about designing the very striking look and feel of Deathloop when you first sort of sat down with the story? How'd you arrive at this sort of like Saul Bass amazing retro feel?
It's true that the game in its development, it's coming back from far away. Because at the beginning, we really want to surprise the players with a grandiose environment. So we really did a lot of research and found some references on the north of Ireland, the Faroe Islands. And after a while, we realized that it was very depressing. It's very, it's full, a lot of horrible weather conditions and tortured places. And so we spoke with the design and narration teams, wondering how could we add more to this environment. And we hadn't thought about time in terms of when this happens. And for a long time, I've been really interested in the 60s. It's something that in movies and in TV shows from my childhood that always struck a chord with me. So we thought, well, why not put the action in the 60s? So it made a great contrast between an island that has seen a lot, that is full again of torture, and something very colorful brought by the 60s. And in the middle, we did all our research and we had a lot of fun with a whole lot of kind of adding some science fiction to it, putting the past to this island because we like playing in an environment that's coherent. So we started with this base island. We added a layer of 30s and 40s structures, made out of metal with a giant dish and a lot of bunkers. And so that's from the 30s and 40s. And we start the game itself at the end of the 60s. So we have several different layers. And inside the 60s, we worked with a lot of references in terms of movies like Point Blank, movies about isolation like The Thing by Carpenter. We remixed it with Swinging in London with some characters. And over time, we managed to create something that was really interesting. And so it was a lot of Soul Path was the logos and the posters was the main kind of inspiration for the posters and the lines for the graffitis, for the costumes, for the buildings, and all of that put together, we really have the impression of having people who are there for an eternal party. And we wanted to be in an environment that had a big contrast with what they were doing.
Wonderful. So we've got the setting, Black Reef, which sounds very vivid and evocative and fun to explore. We've got the time loop mechanic. Let's learn a little about our characters. I'd love to ask both of you, but I'll start with Dinga. Dinga, what can you tell us, given that we only have a few minutes, what would you want to say about Colt and Juliana and the Visionary?
So Colt, he's that guy who wakes up on a black sand beach, no idea of who he is, why he's there. The only thing he knows is that he has a horrible hangover and it's freezing cold. And he's going to, start exploring this place and quickly learn that he's, stuck on this island with everyone on the island wanting to kill him. They say that, he's a traitor, that he wants to ruin their way of life, etc., etc. And very quickly he sees that he's quite, he knows how to use a gun very well. He seems to be a trained, probably soldier. Everyone refers to him as the captain. But that's, not a lot to start with. But very quickly he will meet someone called Juliana, who is apparently knowing a whole lot more about him than he does. That is, taunting him over the radio constantly, and she both wants to stop him from accomplishing his goal, like breaking the loop, and at the same time kind of keep him motivated to at least try, but she won't let him. So she's into this strange game, ambiguous game of taunting him, frustrating him, and killing him a whole lot, I would say.
And Seb, how'd you go about designing the Visionaries? We got to see some of your targets in the video we rolled at the top, and I gotta say the Visionaries just look very, very, each one very unique and different from all the other ones. So how'd you go about designing these targets that we're gonna be tackling?
In my references, I had Tarantino, for example, for colorful characters, and they really had fun finding backgrounds for these characters. And we were inspired by crooners, for example, for Frank, the singer, that you'll discover very soon in a video. For Igor, it's inspired in part by Christopher Reeves and other characters. So it's kind of this strange mix with a 60s bowl cut. And so for all characters in general, we were really inspired by fashion, swinging London, everything that's, the 60s.
If I may, just to say a little bit, because it would be a bit short probably to tell you about each of them, but something that I would say connects all of them in terms of character is that each in their own way, they are rich or famous people, they are all young, they all very entitled, and some of them are very annoying actually. So they are really, I would say, a love-hateable cast. While Colt, on his side, he's more of a kind of a badass, but he doesn't fear to be, the butt of the joke. He's into sometimes self-deprecating humor. That's basically how he deals with the very tense event on the island, with humor and with attitude, etc., etc.
All right, so we've talked about how much fun it was to put together. Sounds like you had a ball. What about the fun we, the gamers, get to have? I want to talk about weapons, powers, things of this nature. Now, in the video, you referenced artifacts that change the way your weapons function, and of course, Arkhane Studios has a long history of amazing supernatural powers in their games. What can you tell us?
We wanted to build a lineup of weapons. So this is our first, the more first-person shooter game that we've made. It still has all those components of stealth and RPG and adventuring, etc., etc. But there's a strong shooting component. So we wanted to have a cast of weapons that was both, for a good part of them, tentpoles of the genre. Like a good, satisfying shotgun, and for some of them, twist a little bit the expectations. Like for instance, there is this big thing. It looks like a machine gun. So even though it has this interesting, machine gun look, it actually handles more like an assault rifle. So there is a nice twist there. And then you can upgrade those weapons by using something that we fictionally call trinkets. So these are small pieces of metal engraved with the Aeon program logo that are imbued with the power of the anomaly that is on the Black Reef island that is causing the time loop. And basically by equipping those trinkets, you can change the properties of your weapons. Like it kind of modifies reality. Interesting effects to really mod your weapons. And on top of that, you can also use some trinkets to actually mod yourself. So being able to jump higher, run faster, regenerate some health when you assassinate someone, things like that. Another main element of progression, you mentioned it, the powers. So they come from even more significant artifacts that we call the slabs. And the slabs are the rarest thing on the Black Reef Island. There is actually not even one per visionary. So most of the visionaries, they have their own slabs, and the only way to get those slabs is to defeat one of those visionaries and take it with you. So those slabs, they allow the user to do various things. So for instance, Alexis, one of the targets, he has a slab called Carnesis that allows him to throw people around, like forward, backward, upward, sideways, etc., etc. And so he will actually use that to throw his own allies at you. I even seen him throw Juliana at me once, which was, I would say, hilarious. And of course, you can get that power out of him and then, use it, etc. As much as we wanted to, to do something very original with this game, a lot of craziness, new world, new characters, a completely, atypical campaign structure with this time loop. We also wanted some familiarity. So for us, the family, that's something that fuels creativity, being able to explore in some directions, but still have things you can, grab to. And we decided to bring back quite a few of the powers that we have in the Dishonored series. I think it's something that will make players feel right at home. And then there is a few twists and modifications. So I think that's a good view of the main player tools.
That sounds great. Wow, thrilling. Well, we're about out of time, but before we wrap up, we did solicit some fan questions, and I would not be a convention panel host if I did not lob some fan questions at you, so let's do that. Our first question comes from Zach Fothergill, and Zach asks, with each target, are there multiple different ways to kill them, such as you can choose between setting a trap, being stealthy, going in guns blazing, or is there a tailored specific way you kill each one?
So there's two answers to that. The first answer is in order to kill a target, yes, there is various ways. There is some ways that we open for you, like opportunities in the sense of maybe using the environment or learning about some dangerous things that are in their levels or making them weaker in different ways. So there is some things that we kind of prepare for you. But overall, yes, getting at the target, you can get at the targets in the way you want. But the second part of the answer would be, in order to break the time loop, you have to, as we mentioned in the video, kill them all in one day, which is, on paper, absolutely impossible. In order to line them up, there is only one solution. So it's really, the game is a gigantic puzzle that you have to solve. And in order to accomplish that puzzle, yes, there is one way to break the time loop. But as you're trying to understand what that way it is, each target can be eliminated in various ways.
I'm going to throw our next fan question at Seb, because I do think it speaks to the design and the look of the game. It comes from Joshua Crisp, who asks, what is the coolest thing that creating Deathloop with the now current gen consoles in mind has really allowed the team to explore that would have been impossible during the previous generation?
Yeah, so there are several things that we were able to do better thanks to the new gen with PS5. The speed of the drive for loading the levels, that was absolutely fantastic. We were also able to change the way we use the remotes and the way we play the sound. Graphically speaking, we were also able to have 4K with textures that are actual 4K and not just upscaled. We have a frame rate that is much better than on our older projects. We concentrated on this game on making the multiplayer work with the invasion from Juliana. That was our main axis. And from there, everything else appeared.
I think you mentioned, for me at least as a player, the main thing when I'm playing or past games like Dishonored or Prey on my, on my console, it was always a game that had 30 FPS as a target. And I think that our games, they work very well with the level of intensity and reactivity that they have. So it's very nice now that we can be targeting 60 FPS, with adaptive 4K resolution. I think it's fantastic. It means that we have a nice looking game. Generally, we took the next gen as a way to have to breathe a little bit. It's like all those sacrifices that you usually have to do at the end of the production, like cut the map in half, all those things that happen during production that you have to scale back. This time, that's where we actually feel the power of the new generation.
Something that was really interesting for us was for Dishonored. In Dishonored, we had a lot of big levels that were also very dense in Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider. And here, our levels are even bigger, and there are a lot of variations and a lot of surprises. So we were very satisfied, very happy with the capabilities of being able to push much farther than what we had done in our previous productions.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're sort of saying in a way Deathloop is the Arkhane game that has the least compromise, right? You didn't have to compromise with obstacles or with reality as much. That's phenomenal to hear. Love hearing artists like getting to take their product to a further extent than ever before.
It suffices to say that we're quite excited for this generation of hardware. Like in general, future looks nice. Like when it starts like this, you're like, what about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? You know.
Our final fan question comes from Grace. Just Grace. Grace asks, how long will it take to beat Deathloop on average? Does it depend on how long the player wants to deeply explore the districts and find clues to eliminate your key targets? So I'm going to interpret that a little bit because I assume it varies, and that's not that interesting of an answer. But yeah, how much focus was put on exploration, potentially like, dead ends, trying things to break the loop that don't work out? How much do you expect the player to sort of explore and use trial and error, and how much do you expect to guide them through the process?
There is a chunky, single player campaign here. Definitely the whole campaign about, basically the beginning hours of the games are a bit directed. You're kind of, again, you're that, that cold guy stumbling his way into trying to understand what is this island, why does everyone want him dead, how can he get away of it, etc., etc. And at some point, you're kind of the game kind of opens up, and you have a certain number of leads, because we consider the game to be, we say, the puzzle. Another way to look at it is it's a big investigation. So this is actually what gets you to being able to break this time loop. So this is, I think it's quite a chunky campaign with a lot of investigation. And then around that, well, it's a time loop. It's a world that is iterating. There is 4 time periods, and there is 4 districts that you can explore. So that's nice variation. So you can explore all of them. Each district has its little story over the day. So in the morning, it's for instance, it's pretty calm because the party is only starting, and by the end of the day, it's very messy with trash everywhere in the street and graffitis all over. And then the next day, it restarts again. So it's nice to see these evolutions in the districts. There is a lot of completely optional, both gameplay and narrative vignettes that the players can discover by exploring the maps. So, which is interesting. We love exploration, We love exploration of space, but here there is an exploration of time. I think it's a pretty chunky game. So I will avoid the "it depends" question. But even if you're just doing the investigation, trying to break the loop and finish the game, very focused, I think it's comparable to our former games. And then there is a lot more to explore and experiment and just have fun and play because of this recursive world, but not recursive, I mean iterative world, as we say. And then there is also the Juliana angle that you can, take control of Juliana and invade another player game, and just have fun there. It's not a very competitive mode. It's not about who wins and who loses. It's like what kind of nice stories we can create. I think there is quite a few hours for people who want to sink their teeth into this game.
Wow, yeah, so you've got exploring the gigantic game world, you've got solving the puzzle, all the various ways you can take out different targets in different orders, acquire powers in different orders, a human can enter your time stream and mess with you. The replay value, frankly, is mind-boggling. So I'm going to get us out of here before we all fall into a Deathloop spiral, and that's all we play for the rest of our lives. How's that for a plug? But thank you so much for joining me, Seb and Dinga. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and I can't wait to play Deathloop. Thank you.
Can't wait for you to play it and to invade you.
Thank you.